Hi there, I'm digital anchor Brandy Smith. We are standing by waiting for a press conference to get started from attorney Tony Buzbee. He is representing one of the victims killed at Astroworld Festival on Friday night, Axel Acosta. All of the identities of those victims have now been confirmed. As we wait for that press conference to get started, I'll run down what we know about each of these 8 people whose ages range from 14 to 27. John Hilgert was a freshman at Memorial High School. Again, he was just 14 years old. We don't have a photo of him at this point. That is something we are working to get a hold of. We know today at Memorial High School there were ribbons of green. Other students wore green in John's memory because that was his favorite color. Brianna Rodriguez is 16. She was one of the last people we were able to confirm the identity of. Again, we take special care with children. Both she and John were just children. They were 14 and 16 years old. She went to Heights High School, where she was on the dance team. She also played in the band, and the band shared a message earlier today just saying that she always loved performing. Jacob Juranek and Franco Patino, they were 20 and 21, best friends, grew up in Naperville, Illinois together. They've known each other since elementary school. They were college students now. Franco Patino was a senior, and although they went to different universities, Franco went to the University of Dayton, Jacob went to, I believe it's the University of South Illinois, Carbondale. They traveled down here together to go to the festival. Axel Acosta, we do not know much about him beyond his age. He had just turned 21, according to attorney Tony Buzbee, and he was from Washington. We may learn more in this press conference that we are waiting on. Madison Dubisky is another one we just confirmed the name of earlier this morning. We know she went to Cy-Fair High School. She was a cheerleader there, and she was 23 years old. We are working to learn more about all of these victims today, and we will have more updates throughout the afternoon here on social media and then on air at 4, 5, 6, and 10. Rudy Pena was 23. He was a college student from Laredo whose friends say he was just a people person, like to introduce others to each other, like just bring people together. And then finally, Danish Beg, 27. His brother says he would have turned 28 last year, but his brother says he was trampled while trying to save his fiancée from that fate. And he was laid to rest yesterday in his hometown of Colleyville up in North Texas. I mentioned Tony Buzbee is representing the family of Axel Acosta. And he was one of the 21-year-olds who was killed during Travis Scott's concert at Astroworld on Friday night. We still have a lot of questions. We don't have causes of death for any of the victims. We're hoping to get some of those details today. We have been told that toxicology reports will take a while. What Fire Chief Sam Pena and Police Chief Troy Finner have talked about was the issue of crowd surge, which is different than what am I trying to say? Crowd surge, the pressure comes from both directions. So a lot of people who were there in the trouble spots describe not being able to breathe, getting trapped, losing consciousness. We talked to an ICU nurse who said she couldn't breathe, was just trying to catch her breath, collapsed. Her I can't remember if it was her boyfriend, husband, fiance, partner, was able to get her back up. And when she came to, she saw that other people were in really bad shape. So she was able to help some of them and revive some of them. At this point, there are only 8 victims confirmed,
This is from the police chief, the fire chief, the mayor, county judge. I know there's a number 11 floating around there, and I believe that's linked to Sam Pena Friday night, early Saturday morning, really, saying that there were 11 reported cases of cardiac arrest. But he clarified on Saturday that some of those victims were able to be revived. Huge numbers, though, we're talking about. 8 deaths, but 300 hurt, 25 bad enough to be hospitalized. The good news is that all but 4 of those had been discharged from the hospital at last check. And those are all numbers we are working to get updates on today, as well as get a lot of questions answered about the venue and the staffing and the protocols. I was sitting near investigative reporter Jeremy Rogalski earlier today when he was talking to a crowd control expert about some of the protocols outlined in a 56-page document that was laid out before Astroworld. Kind of all the contingency plans for everything from a fire to an earthquake to a hurricane. So those answers are coming up as soon as he can put that story together. But I think this is just really difficult for the community to see lives lost and young lives. 14, 16, 20, 21, 23, 27. All just so young. There are 3 verified GoFundMe fundraisers for a couple of these victims. We have those links on khou.com if you would like to contribute to funeral costs, anything like that. And again, we're working to learn more about all of these victims, including Axel Acosta. He is the 21-year-old Washington man who died at Astroworld Festival Friday night. We are standing by waiting for that press conference to get started. Attorney Tony Buzbee is holding that press conference. Let me give you a live. Here's what we're waiting on. So you can see we're ready to go. This was set to start at 2:30. And I'm going to bring you those comments as soon as anyone steps up to that podium, to that microphone. But I think the focus really now is on these 8 victims, what happened to them, how it happened, and whether it could have been prevented. Those are answers we're looking into. It's something the fire and police chiefs, mayor and judge all said will be investigated to figure out if the plans put in place were not enough, if the plans put in place weren't followed, what happened that could have caused such tragedy and had an impact for so many families. I also just spoke to our KHU 11 mental health expert, Bill Prasad. He's a licensed professional counselor who talked about the trauma that a lot of people experienced either directly or vicariously. So, for example, I was at the concert, never saw anything that looked like trouble, left, and woke up the next morning to the headlines. And there are going to be tens of thousands of people who have that experience, who have a really hard time reconciling what their experience was like and then what happened maybe a couple yards, maybe 100 feet away from where they stood in the crowd. And we're really finding it all depends on where you were in the crowd. It appears that the folks who were killed, who were hurt, were closer to the front. And so when that crowd surge happened, they got pressure from both sides, from the folks behind them pushing to move forward to get closer to the stage, but then from folks ahead of them who were pushing back, trying to fight back against that pressure or to get out. And what you end up with is folks who are caught in between, who fall, who can't get up, who can't catch their breath, who pass out. And I know I've seen multiple accounts of people who say there were just people lying on the ground. And some suggesting that the death count is actually higher because of what they saw. But this is the confirmed death toll from Houston Fire, Police, and city and county leaders. 8. 8 is too many. 8 is far too many. But I think all of us can be grateful it wasn't more, especially with 300 hurt. We have information about all 8 of these victims on khou.com. We're updating in real time as we learn more, especially about Brianna Rodriguez and Madison Dubisky. Those two were the last 2 names that KHOU was able to confirm and release. CBS Chicago talked to friends and family of Jacob Juranek and Franco Patino, the gentlemen who were from Illinois, who grew up together. And then our sister station up in Dallas, WFAA, talked to Basil Beg, who is the brother of Danish Beg, the 27-year-old who was killed. Still no real movement up at the podium. It looks like they're just adjusting microphones and technology. As you can imagine, there is a lot of interest in this story, not just locally, but nationally, internationally. Travis Scott is a world-renowned artist. He sold millions of records, and people came from all over. When I was there covering the festival, I talked to people who were from Charlotte, who drove overnight from California. This was an event people really wanted to be a part of, and so they were willing to make that trek for the experience. And obviously, it had a heartbreaking end for many, many people. Going back to what mental health expert Bill Prasad mentioned is that if you had a child, or if you have a friend who was at the show and is starting to show signs of anxiety, that's pretty normal in the first 30 days. In the first 30 days after something like this, those symptoms are common. But beyond that 30 days, if those symptoms continue, nightmares, a change in eating habits, irritability, inability to focus, things like that, if those symptoms continue beyond 30 days, it's really important that those kids, anyone who was there, go talk to a professional, because it is possible that they're suffering some symptoms of PTSD that cannot be diagnosed within the first 30 days. That's why you really got to be looking for those symptoms, about a month out. And when I was talking to him, Bill basically said, mark on the calendar when you need to do that self-check again and see how you're doing, because there could be compound trauma as well. 50,000 people there. I mentioned that they came from all over, but a lot of them are from Houston, and we have gone through a lot in the past couple of years. When you think about Harvey, think about the Santa Fe shooting. There is a lot of trauma in this community, and we kind of seem to just be piling on. I'm sorry, I'm going to cough. I'm going to turn my mic off for just a moment. Sorry, back now. My apologies. If you're just joining us, we are standing by waiting for a press conference to begin. Attorney Tony Buzbee is representing the family of Axel Acosta, a 21-year-old from Washington. We have heard that his family is here. We're hoping to learn more about him because at this point, because Buzbee asked for privacy for the family, we just don't know much about him at all. I'm going to bring his picture back up real quickly. He is the 21-year-old who, he was one of a couple 21-year-olds who was killed at Astroworld Festival on Friday night. And his is one of 3 verified GoFundMe accounts set up GoFundMe goes through a pretty extensive process verifying those because in instances like this, it has a policy to waive any fees, and that's what it's doing for. I'm sorry, I want to say it's Axel, Rudy, and Brianna. I know Brianna for sure because that's where I read about her love of dance, her passion for dance. That's what the family described on the GoFundMe page. Again, we have a lot of coverage. I mean, we're trying to get as many questions answered. So if you go to khau.com, it could probably be a little overwhelming. We have information about each of the 8 victims. We have input from a crowd control expert about what could have been done. Firsthand accounts from folks who made it out. That ICU nurse that I mentioned earlier, who went down because she couldn't breathe. She lost her breath. Thank you. Oh, it appears the family is coming up to the podium, so I'm going to go ahead and take that shot, although it looks like it just froze. Here we go. I'll join you on the other end of this and kind of recap what we've heard.
This is Edgar Acosta. This is Joel Acosta, Cynthia Acosta, and Jesus Acosta. On November 5th, 2021, more than 50,000, mostly young people, attended what was supposed to be a two-day concert event known as Astroworld, put on by Travis Scott and the other defendants in this case. During the first night of the concert, 8 of the concert goers died, and scores of others suffered significant injuries. One of those killed was 21-year-old Axel Acosta. Axel died as a result of a phenomenon known as crowd rush. Crowd rush occurs when you have an extremely large and high-density crowd moving in one direction in a confined space. People involved in a crowd rush get carried by a river of people uncontrollably. Importantly, people that have been involved in crowd rush typically do not die from being trampled. They die from what is known as compressive asphyxiation, from the sheer force of all the weight of the bodies being stacked on top of them. This is exactly what happened to Axel. The immense force of the unruly and out-of-control crowd, created by the defendant's gross negligence, created such significant pressure onto his body that he could not breathe. The air was literally slowly squeezed out of him, sending his heart into cardiac arrest. When he collapsed, concert goers trying to escape their own suffocation caused by the crowd rush trampled over his body like a piece of trash. When emergency caregivers finally removed Axel from the thick of human mass, he lay lifeless on the wet, littered grass at the edge of the chaos. They worked very hard to restart his heart, but they failed. Axel died on the muddy ground of a concert that he attended for fun. Axel Acosta loved rap music, and he loved the lineup that was going to be playing at Astroworld. But that love and that feeling was not mutual. Certainly neither Travis Scott nor his handlers, entourage, managers, agents, hangers-on, promoters, organizers, or sponsors cared enough about Axel to make even a minimal effort to keep him and the others at the concert safe. This concert was intended for young people. We've seen that many of the people who attended were minors. I was thinking last night, my son went to Astroworld the first year it was held. Why wasn't my son crushed and killed? Perhaps the only reason was he decided not to go. I want everyone watching to know that this could have been your kid. This could have been your kid. We will be filing a lawsuit on behalf of 35 plaintiffs. That number is growing. Our phone is rang off the hook. I think it's self-evident that this concert was planned incredibly poorly, that no regard was given to the safety of these young people at the concert, that there was no emergency response mechanism in place to help those who were in an extremist situation. There was not enough medical personnel, enough security personnel, and there were more people there than should have been there. The way the concert was set up, planned, organized, and the way things were handled once there was a problem, it boggles the mind. We'll be filing suit against the score more entities. These were the promoters, management. This is an entity that's been sued multiple times for this very thing. We will be suing Live Nation. Remember, it was Live Nation who in 2011 was sued because a stage collapsed and killed 7 people and injured 61 others. It was Live Nation who received a $101 million verdict against it for a concert employee being injured by a forklift. It was Live Nation who in 2013, concert attendees said they were run over, beaten, and assaulted during a stampede. It was Live Nation who put on a Gwen Stefani concert where a woman was injured during a mid-show stampede. And let me say to Live Nation, because we were involved in the concert that took place in Las Vegas where the many, many people were hurt, and Live Nation relied upon an arbitration clause on the back of a ticket. Do you really intend? Do you really believe that you can enforce an arbitration clause against minors, against people killed, against people who are still in the hospital? I think not. The case will also be brought against an entity called Contemporary Services Corp., who provided security. The case will be brought against Harris County Sports and Convention Corporation, the premises owner who worked with NRG, was supposed to provide security and make sure the facility was safe. I want to remind you that this is not the first instance where people were injured at concerts. It's a long history in the United States and in the world where individuals who came to a concert looking to have fun, looking to enjoy themselves, did not leave, or certainly did not leave still alive. One of the experts who's looked at the history of concert goers and the multiple events that have occurred has said the history of how the concerts are handled is a history of disinterest and greed. I think that's what we have here. And let's talk about Jock Webster II, otherwise known as Travis Scott. On August 2nd, 2015, Travis Scott was arrested in Chicago for disorderly conduct after encouraging fans to jump over security barricades during his performance at Lollapalooza. In 2017, Travis Scott was charged with inciting a riot, disorderly conduct, because he encouraged the crowd to bypass security and to bypass on-duty police officers. Let's take a little further look at Travis Scott and his antics. You got sound? This video, you see Travis Scott standing on the stage, encouraging people to bypass security and to charge the stage. Travis Scott specifically yelled into the crowd, asking them to bypass security, bypass the police personnel, and rush the stage. Next slide, please. In that video, you saw Travis Scott, who was crowd surfing. Someone took his shoe, and he instructed the crowd to F him up, F him up, F him up, to the point the poor person who was being targeted by Travis Scott had to be carried away to escape with his life. Next slide.
I see you. Hold on, turn the lights on. Turn the lights on. I see you, but are you gonna do it? Give me 18 real quick. I see you, but are you gonna do it? Ain't no lie. Turn the lights on. Turn the lights on.
In that video, you see Travis Scott encouraging someone who's standing on the upper levels to jump into the crowd. And during that very concert, somebody was pushed and was incredibly badly injured because of his conduct. Next slide. Here's a tweet Travis Scott sent out before another concert where he's encouraging people who don't have tickets to crash through the security and come to the concert anyway. Next slide.
I'm strong and we got another stretch. November come, won't you pop out at the fest?
That's just a small snippet of the video to encourage concert goers to attend Astroworld. This was video from previous Astroworld concerts. It's utter chaos that's encouraged not only by Travis Scott, but by everybody involved in putting the concert on. Next slide. Now, this tweet was reported, and we haven't been able to confirm, and maybe you can, whether this tweet is legit. But here we have a tweet from the Houston Police Department where they acknowledge that the security at Astroworld concert was insufficient. And you'll also notice, if you go back and you look at Chief Fenner, some of the things that he put out in some of the interviews, where he talks about how many people he was going to have engaged in assisting with security at Astroworld and how that number changed based on when he was interviewed. I encourage you to look at that. And we also know that it's been reported by the New York Times that allegedly our police chief met with Travis Scott or Travis Scott's people, indicating concern about some of the things that have been said and things that have been done leading up to the concert. And we know that when the gates were opened in the early afternoon of November 5th, that was the scene. Next slide. I ask you, does that look safe? Does that look organized, well run? Does that look like somebody took the time, effort, and energy to properly plan a concert to keep the individuals who pay their money and attend safe? Or does that look like utter chaos? And if it was like that in the early afternoon, imagine what it must have been like at 9 or 10 o'clock at night. We've had repeated reports, more than 30 different witnesses who have provided statements saying that the screening was non-existent, that there was no COVID screening, there was no security screening, that people were just being let in, bags weren't checked, people were smoking weed rampant throughout the concert, and that people were taking drugs. There was no management of that event whatsoever. It was pure and utter chaos. And had they told the people attending that that was going to be what it was like, most of them would not have attended. All over the internet we see, on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and other social media sites, the utter chaos that existed on that night. We see Travis Scott continuing to perform while EMTs and other first responders are trying to save people's lives. We know specifically with regard to Axel Acosta, we know that the individuals trying to save his life did not have what they needed to save that young man's life. There weren't enough people to help him. They did not have the right equipment. And he did not need to die. I'm not going to show all the various video that we've collected. It's all over the internet, but no one who sees that video would have wanted to be at that concert had they known that's what it was going to be like. And that brings me to Axel Acosta. He had just turned 21. He was incredibly good at computers. He had just transferred to a new university. He was going to school with his brother Joel. He comes from an extremely close family. His grandmother and grandfather are devastated, just as is his uncle and aunt, brother and father. This was needless. It was unnecessary and could have easily been prevented. We expect to file a lawsuit either today or tomorrow or the next couple of days. We want to make sure we get it right. We want to make sure that everybody is included that needs to be included. In this lawsuit, we intend to change the way concerts are put on, organized, promoted, and managed in the United States and in the world. It's our goal to make sure that this good, decent, solid young man did not die for nothing. I'm going to give you a couple of questions with Edgar. I told him that, as you can imagine, this is crushing for him. He has an appointment this afternoon with the funeral home to make arrangements so his son can go back home.
Señora Acosta, Pedro Rojas, Televisión, ¿nos puede hablar en español y contarnos cómo se siente, cómo está impactado usted por lo que le ha pasado?
Pues me siento devastado por la pérdida de mi hijo, pero como dice el abogado, esperemos que su vida cambie las cosas de cómo se hacen esos eventos, porque él vino a tener un rato agradable, tenía todas sus cosas preparadas para su regreso, muy responsable en la escuela. Y una cosa por negligencia de alguien que pasen estas cosas, porque todos los que hayan venido vinieron a divertirse.
Wait, we're not doing it that way. We're not yelling at him.
Is there any way to get
Mr.
him?
Acosta?
Just wait a minute, please. We're going to take 2 more questions. Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Acosta, we just wanted to know, how did you learn about your son's passing? We understand that it took some time for him to be identified.
Yes, it took some time because as soon as we received the news, I was trying to get hold of him. I called to his hotel. They tell me that he didn't spend the night. That's why I started calling the sheriff office, the reunification, and they told me, Mr. Acosta, your son is not on the list, so you don't have to worry about anything. He's not on the list from the dead people or injured people. And I told them, well, he didn't spend the night on his hotel, so I'm worried about him. And then my son, he found his phone in the lesson phone, right? And so we tried to call again and ask for him for the body without identification. We called the hospitals, we called the sheriff office, and they tell me, no, we have all the names on the list, and he's not on the list.
Mr. Acosta, could you please tell us?
No, just a minute. I want to make sure we're clear about something. When the Acosta family, when his son's name was not on the list, he also inquired, well, are there anybody who is unidentified? Because they figured out that Axel's phone was in lost and found, and Axel was not the kind of young man that didn't answer his phone or did not stay in touch with his brother or his dad. He stayed in touch with his brother and father. So they knew something was up when they found out that he did not spend the night in the hotel. That is absolutely not like Axel. That's not like Axel. He does not drink. He does not do drugs. He does not stay out all hours of the night. So when they inquired, well, are there any, has anybody been recovered that you don't know who they are? And he was told no, that there wasn't. And it was only until they found the picture going around on the internet that they realized that a member of their family had died. So it wasn't just the fact that his son had died, his brother had died. It was the way they found out about it. It was just horrific. We'll do one more question.
Mr. Acosta, could you please tell us, first, what do you hope to accomplish with this lawsuit, and what do you want the world to know about your son?
I think the lawyer already said that we're trying to make things change in this type of events. Because it could, today is me. I lost my son. It could be you, it could be you. When you send your kid to have some fun, and because somebody else is not providing the right, I don't know how I can explain, but the right security, because it's not the first time that he's been in a big events, right? You can go to Disneyland and have fun. You can go to a baseball game and have fun, right? Because they have the right security, the right people. Some people assisting injured. It's hard to explain.
And what would you like the world to know about your son?
He was a great kid, excellent student. He was looking for his family. He loves his grandparents. He was trying to study and going to school to be he was trying to be an engineer or computer programmer because he want to provide for his family. He really cares about them. He was the first grandkid. He was the oldest one, and he always take care of his other cousin and nieces.
¿Nos puede dar la misma respuesta en español, señor? ¿Cómo quiere que recuerden a su hijo? Solo que le van a traer el teléfono.
Pues quiero que lo recuerden como un muy buen estudiante. Se graduó con los altos GPAs desde la high school, desde la casi viene siendo un estudiante con straight A's. Fue el primer nieto, amaba a sus abuelos, veía por sus primos, el mayor, y un excelente hijo.
What we're asking for those that watch is if you have information, if you were at the concert and you have key information, or information at least that you believe is key, contact our office. We want to talk to you. We believe that the video on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook is going to be key to this case. And we ask that if you have such video, that you provide it to us. If you have information, provide it to us. We're easy to find. And you should also know that I think as we speak here, there is a hearing going on in court for a temporary restraining order to restrain the various entities that are being sued, to preserve all the evidence, and to make sure that Travis Scott preserve all of the texts and so forth on his telephone or telephones, and hopefully we will get that relief that we are seeking. And with that, that is all we're going to do today. Thank you.
Tony, can you give us the info on the TRO hearing? Is that happening now?
It's happening right now.
In which court?
I think the ancillary judge is Judge Sandhill.
All right, that is a wrap on that press conference from attorney Tony Buzbee, who is representing the family of Axel Acosta. That press conference started off outlining what attorney Tony Buzbee alleges are the failures of many of the different levels of organization involved in the Astroworld Festival, making some pointed accusations about Live Nation, which has been involved in lawsuits before, of Travis Scott showing videos of past performances, of tweets where he has appears to encourage behavior. Let me bring this back full.
And then we learned more about Axel Acosta, who was the 21-year-old from Washington who was killed Friday night. And some of the verbiage used is pretty graphic. And it's difficult. Buzbee described Axel being trampled, quote, like a piece of trash. He said that the first responders didn't have the equipment to help people like Axel, and that is why the victims passed. One of the other things Buzbee said was, this could have been your kid. And there is a lot of that what if right now for people who walked away from the concert, people whose kids were thinking about going, people who were, adults who were thinking about going. We also learned a lot more about Axel Acosta. Again, 21 years old. He had just transferred to a new university so that he could go to school with his brother. The family is described as extremely close. His dad, Edgar, said he was a great kid, excellent student, and that he was really interested in computers. He was studying to become a computer engineer or programmer because he really wanted to be able to provide for his family. We learned he was the oldest of his cousins, and he always looked after, took care of those younger cousins. At the end of that press conference, Attorney Buzbee did put out a call for any information. He also mentioned that the plan was to file the lawsuit on behalf of Axel Acosta's family in the next couple of days. There are several lawsuits now, so I believe this would be, by our count, there were 5 earlier today. I'm not sure if we included this, not knowing that it hadn't been officially filed yet, but there are at least a handful of lawsuits at this point, not just from the family of the victims who were killed, but of others who suffered injuries as well. We have information about some of those on khou.com, but before we leave, I just want to bring up the photos, the identities of those 8 victims, including Axel Acosta, John Hilgert, Brianna Rodriguez, Jacob Juranek, Franco Patino, Madison Dubisky, Rudy Pena, Danish Beg. We are working to learn more about all 8 of these people, as well as others who were there who were injured. We're trying to get updates on the 4 who were still hospitalized as of Saturday, and we are going to continue to bring you those updates here online. Be sure to check Facebook, Twitter. We're sharing updates on Instagram, YouTube, but also over the air on khou.com, or I'm sorry, on KHOU at 4, 5, 6, and 10, but khou.com also is a great resource. If you're looking for updates, looking for new information, I would direct you to khou.com as the first resource. As we learn more, we are constantly updating that. I will leave you with that and hop back on here if we get any new information.